Home sweet home. Well, actually, I've been home for about 4 days now. I flew back on the 3rd of October, and it is the 7th as I make this. So it's been 4 days. The reason I didn't quite get to this video until now was because my dad was in town, and I don't see him very often. So my sister and I were spending some time with him, obviously, family, right? So I didn't get around to this until now, but here we are. We are going to hit you with the concluding video. Things I didn't tell you about the trip, things maybe you did or did not notice, because there is a lot to get to. So let's get to this summary, this synopsis, this whatever you want to call it, this rundown of the past 2 weeks as I was venturing through the British Isles. Now, as I alluded to in the first video that I did in Manchester, things got off to a bit of a rough start. Lufthansa canceled my flight. That was the original itinerary I had flying out there. It was a Lufthansa flight from Chicago to Frankfurt, or I'm sorry, Chicago to Manchester with the stop in Frankfurt, because let's be honest, who the hell flies to Frankfurt as a final destination? Everybody connects there. So that didn't go as planned. I actually received a notification about it via text, and needless to say, my heart was racing. I was very, very surprised and anxious as to what the hell am I going to do now. But anyone who flies frequently knows, usually, not all the time, but usually, I think for the most part, if your flight is canceled, they rebook you, like typically the day after, because that's what they did with me. So instead of Lufthansa all the way there, I was rebooked with a stop in Dublin getting there with two different airlines. Not the first time I've connected with two different airlines. I've actually done that before coming back from Berlin. I flew from Berlin to Heathrow on Eurowings, which is a route that actually doesn't exist anymore. And then from Heathrow back here on United. So not the first time. So first flight I had, it was from here to Dublin on United, and then the second one was United, or was Dublin to Manchester on Aer Lingus. So it was Aer Lingus, the new airline that I tried out, the new national flag carrier that I tried out. So Lufthansa became Aer Lingus. So anyway, I know I prefaced a lot there, but so after receiving this very concerning text, what I do is, well, let's just go to the airport anyway, so I do my whole routine. I take the bus to the Blue Line, all that. You're probably wondering, oh, why didn't you show us that? So I hate to disappoint you guys, but yeah, you know the routine by now, so I didn't need to, do the whole rundown of me getting to the airport. Hey, here's me at the airport. Here's me on the plane. You don't need to see that crap anymore. It would just be redundant at this point. So anyway, I go there, I go to the Lufthansa customer service desk, and I overheard the person saying to someone in line in front of me that the reason for the cancellation had to do with, I think it was an engine failure on the arriving aircraft, which obviously is going to be the same aircraft we used to fly over there. So that's what it was. And it makes sense because it was an aging plane. Lufthansa has had some issues kind of getting new aircraft, right? The A350s, what have you, maybe some 787 Dreamliners. So they're holding on to their 747s, their A340s. I was supposed to be on an A340, but I guess when you are flying older aircraft, they're much more prone to these mechanical issues, these pretty severe mechanical issues, right? Engine failure, that is nothing to scoff at. So I figured, well, and while I was waiting in line, that's when I got the text that I was rebooked on the flight I just told you about, or flights, I should say. So I'm like, well, let's just get a hotel. Because the thing is, I could have gone back here, or rather I could have stayed here. But the problem with that was I didn't have any food, right? So typically what I do before these travels is I see to it that I don't have like any perishables left to expire. But aside from that, I don't want anything going stale. So I tend to kind of eat the rest of the food I have and kind of try to calculate out roughly what I'm going to need before. So, I'm not leaving anything just sitting there for 2 weeks. So I wouldn't have had any food for like the next 24 hours. So I'm just like, yeah, I'm just going to this hotel. And my buddy, he sees me on the snap map of like, oh, I see you're kind of in the area closer to me. Let's hang out. So we have a good time. We go to this place to eat, and that's that. Next morning, well, actually, my the flight I have isn't until like 8:30 or something like that. So I had plenty of time to chill. So, shower, shave, all that kind of stuff, watch some TV on the Westin TV. It was a Westin they put me at, and some others. Anyway, so fast forward, I get to Dublin for my connection, and I'm wondering how this goes. How does a layover to the UK go if you transit in Dublin or through Dublin? There is a customs check that I had to clear in Dublin before doing that, but that was easy peasy for me because I know my script to a T. I know exactly what I need to tell the customs officer as to like how long I'm staying, where I'm going exactly, when do I fly out. That's all they need to know at the end of the day. And got the stamp, and probably the last stamp I'll get because they are phasing them out, like I said, and I think the last conclusion video I did on one of the other trips. Get rid of that. So so I'm on the plane to Manchester. The weather is actually sunny, which is surprising for this part of the world, right? You think British Isles, you think cold, rain, just a bleak kind of weather. But no, the weather was actually really, really good. It was phenomenal getting in. No rain or anything, which actually was a blessing in disguise, because if Lufthansa hadn't canceled my flight in some kind of parallel universe, and everything went fine on their end, I would have actually arrived in Manchester in pouring ass rain. So that wouldn't have been good, because once I got to Manchester, first of all, it was a long ass freaking walk to that Metrolink train and just the train station they have, which is right next to it. Very long walk. So if you're looking to get your steps in, definitely go to that airport and, take the public transport to get to the city center. You won't regret it. And it's funny, one of the stops on the tram was called Firstwood. That's so like first without the T. And in my head, I'm thinking, I remember my Firstwood. Right? So it was, I didn't want to say that to anyone because people would probably just be like, read the room, dumbass. Right? So I didn't want to attract any attention, but I thought that was pretty funny in my head. It was nearly impossible finding that hostel once I got to my stop because it's hidden, man. It was hidden. The Manchester hostel out of the 4 I stayed at was the hardest one to find. Eventually I did find it, but yeah, it took a while. I definitely had a Copenhagen type catastrophe on my hands trying to find this place. So, I get there. Everything's good. Not much content to film in Manchester, at least from what I saw, so I get why people don't really go there. It's definitely not catered to tourists like the other places I was at or were at. But I gotta say, speaking on the weather again, the weather was phenomenal, man. I'm like phenomenal. In Fahrenheit, it was 50s, 60s, and like sunny. It was cloudy sometimes, but it was like, when I was in the UK mostly, it was sunny. And I'm like, what is going on here? I thought it was going to rain every other day. But no, that didn't happen. I really lucked out with that weather. So I was counting my blessings for sure. So one problem I had with taking the trains over in the UK, there's quite a bit of them to choose from. The northern trains, are they really that bad? Because I had some crazy delays on those things when I was trying to get to, I think it was Wrexham, because I had a connection to make there and back. So I don't know if they're always that bad, because I also went on the Transpennine Express, I went on the LNER, I went on ScotRail, Transport for Wales. So those other ones weren't as bad, but the northern ones, like, holy crap, those were horrendous with their on-time performance. But anyway, so fast forward, I get to Edinburgh, and my dumbass did not realize how hilly that place was. I really should have taken a cab or something like that to my hostel, because I was hauling up my big ass suitcase up like the insane hills you guys have. I mean, holy fuck, I was an idiot for not realizing that ahead of time, Really should have done more research on that. Anyway, we get there and, have a good time, as you have seen in the videos that I made there, or the video, I should say, composed of the clips. And when I fly out, because I have to fly to Belfast now, and they have a direct rail connection in Edinburgh, right? They have a tram that gets you to the airport. So I go to the Princess Street stop, Princess Street. And it's like early in the morning, like 5 a.m. or whatever it is. And there's workers there and they see me and they're like, are you going to the airport? I'm like, oh, yes, I am. And they're like, there's actually no tram service today. And I'm like, nuts. But the person said that, you can actually take the bus and it's faster too. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll do that then. And I asked him if it's contactless. She said, yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. So I get to the bus and this threw me off actually. And it threw other people off taking the bus too. That being, you have to tell the driver where you're going first and then you pay. See, I'm not used to that because when I take buses here all the time, I take buses here in Chicago all the time, like 5 days a week at least. And the way it works there is you tap your card and that's all you need to do. You don't need to talk to the driver or anything like that unless you have a specific question about where you're going. And it's a fixed rate. Doesn't matter how long you're on that bus, you pay the same amount. Not in Edinburgh, and I'm sure this goes for other cities too. No, it depends how far you're going, and then you pay. It's like, okay, I didn't know that. And anyway, and I'm on the EasyJet plane. That was actually pretty nice because I always wanted to fly EasyJet for a couple of years now, ever since seeing the show Airline, which is centered around, that airline out of where do they film mainly? Luton, which is one of London's like bajillion airports, Liverpool and elsewhere. And flight was good. It was smooth. It was short. So I'm flying to Belfast from Edinburgh. So that's like a, very short hop compared to the other flights I've been on. And once we got to Belfast, it was pissing it down, man. It was raining like nobody's business. Holy shite. So I took the bus to the, the Central Station, the Grand Central Station, which I think came after the New York's Grand Central Station. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's what it is. So yeah, I get to Belfast. Eventually, I find my hostel. It's what I had to do is I had to take it to what's called the City Hospital stops, which is one stop from Grand Central. And fortunately for me, once I got there, the rain finally largely lingered away. It was only a patchy drizzle that I was dealing with, so nothing really there. And this was probably the easiest hostel to find once I did that. All I had to do was just go down the road and that was it. It was right next to a KFC and all that. And yeah, it was nice. And I actually got a room to myself, which I found pretty surprising. Anyway, so Belfast, yeah, it's definitely, like I said in the video, an up-and-coming place when it comes to tourism. Not many tourists come there still, but, they're working on it. They're working on propping up that tourism industry in Northern Ireland, or Nordireland, or however you say it in the accent. Not going to mock it anymore, don't worry. One thing I found also in Northern Ireland is it was kind of hard trying to understand the accent, because I can tell you, there is definitely a difference between the Northern Irish accent and the Irish accent. There is for sure a difference, because I had quite a bit of issues trying to understand the Northern Ireland accent. But once I was in Dublin, then I'm like, oh, I get what you're saying. Yeah. I hear what you're saying, right? So as for Scotland, actually, if I can backtrack a little bit, when I was in restaurants and whatnot, not many of them were like native Scots. Right? Like they didn't have the Scottish accent that you hear in the movie, like Trainspotting. So that was nice. I was able to understand them. But I know the tour guide I had, he was a true Scotsman, right? He had the accent and everything, but he slowed it down, I guess, so we can understand him. And I was able to understand him like to a T, I guess, once he slowed it down a little bit, kind of talked at Dave Pacman's speed, if you've ever seen his political commentary show. So yeah, Edinburgh was awesome. Belfast was actually pretty nice. Did a walking tour there. as I said in the video there. And I got down to Dublin. I'd take the Enterprise train, and I thought it was cool. So I pre-booked this train, and they actually had my name on the on like where I'm sitting, and I thought that was a really nice touch. I don't think many other people got that because I booked it so far in advance. And I did have a conversation with a I guess you would say a fine lad. He was yeah, he was, I think, I forget what station he boarded at, but yeah, we were both going to Dublin. He's like, "Oh, you're going to Dublin?" And I'm like, "Yep." And he said, "Oh yeah, it's expensive." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah." And I said where I'm from, and he's like, "Oh, is it expensive there?" And I said, "Well, it really depends where you're at, right? Because the U.S. is a big place. It really depends which city you're in as to how much you'll be paying for hotels and food and whatnot." So anyway, I had a nice conversation, and make it to Dublin. And yeah, it was easy to find that hostel too, actually. Just like I did in Belfast, I took the tram actually this time to the Abbey Street stop. And right there, I'm like, okay, cool. I just have to go there, and that's all there is to it. Now, one issue I actually had at the Dublin hostel was they have the plug outlets for each bed, right? And the way they're situated, so at first I put my pillow on like the side. I don't know how to explain this, but I put my pillow, where like right next to it, and I sleep there, and I have my plug adapter plugged in, my phone charging, and this had to be like just after midnight or something like that. I must have done that, right? I must have like moved my arm or something like that, which I guess brings me to a new discovery, which is I'm quite agile in my sleep from the waist up. So I guess I moved my arms around quite a bit. And all of a sudden, my phone, my charger, it all drops to the bed below me, the bunk below me, and someone's sleeping there. And I'm like, ooh, that was exactly what I needed. Fortunately, the person sleeping there actually wound up putting my stuff on the windowsill, which was right next to the bed. So, problem solved, disaster averted. My phone was totally fine, not cracked or anything. Now, with the case I have on it. And one thing I noticed in Dublin too is the sidewalks get super crowded. Like like right next to the river, like just north of there, I think it's called Bachelor's Walk. It's like, oh, that's because it's touristy. Well, yeah, I know that, but you also have all these bus stops like situated like 2 freaking inches from each other, so it actually fills up quite a bit because of that too. So yeah, people waiting for buses, and holy fuck, man, that takes up a lot of space on the sidewalk. With that being said, yeah, as predicted, Edinburgh and Belfast were definitely the most touristy parts of my trip here, for sure. Uh, but in any sense, in any case, I definitely had a good time, and we're back here now, and I'm just about adjusted back to my home time zone. And one more thing I need to talk about, though, we need to address. I guess I can't say the elephant in the room, but you know what I mean. That being, this is the first time I've traveled as an American since Trump got back into office. And people were warning me, like, you might want to put a Canadian flag on your backpack so you don't get perceived as like some MAGA retard. I didn't have that problem actually. There wasn't a lot of like, not that I talked to too many people, but like when I told them where I was from, they weren't like all like, oh, Trump this, Trump that. It's like, but even if they did say that, I wouldn't shy away from talking crap about the guy, right? So I was totally prepared for that. But I didn't really come across any like, oh, like, F you or whatever, right? Because of your president. I didn't encounter anything like that. And to be fair, I would have agreed to I would agree I would have agreed with them 1000% if they had anything bad to say about who. So I think that'll just about wrap it up. That's kind of the rough rundown as to like, the things I may not have touched on, the things you may not have known about my trip, and the issues I might have faced. Overall, it was a good trip, and other than the flight cancellation, and I lost a day obviously because of that, things worked out definitely. I didn't have any more hiccups other than like the usual trying to find like some of these hostels, or really just one in this case. So yeah, everything went pretty smoothly other than the initial hurdle I had. Which brings me to the ultimate reveal. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not doing a drum roll for this one, but my next year's trip is going to be, you're never going to guess this, Canada. That's right. I'm not going to go far for next year. I don't have to worry about jet lag or anything like that. So nice. But no, I do want to see more of Canada because, I went to Calgary back 3 years ago now. Yeah, 3 years ago. But this time I want to see Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, and if I may be able to squeeze it in, Quebec City. So hopefully those four places, and then I want to, research day trips from like these places. I already know I'm going to also do Niagara Falls because from what I hear, it's actually much more magnificent and beautiful on the Canadian side than the American side from what I've seen, on other people like documenting it on YouTube on this very platform. So that's what we're going to do. We're just doing Canada, kind of the eastern half, the major metropolises, metropoli, whatever the plural form of metropolis is. And that'll be it. So with that being said, I will see you whenever I upload next. I don't know when that'll be, as you know, but so long.